Ladies and gentlemen, can I have your attention, please? Please welcome the President and CEO of the Center for Health Design, Deborah Levin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Is everybody having a great day so far? Fabulous. At least this group is. Is everybody having a great day so far? My work here is done. So welcome to the Center for Health Design's award ceremony, and thank you so much for showing up to celebrate some of our best and our brightest. Founded in 1993, the Center for Health Design's mission is to transform healthcare for a healthier, safer world through design research, education, and advocacy. As an extension of that mission, the Center is committed to advancing research, education, collaborative partnerships, and innovative new ideas that improve the life experience, that support people as they age through the environments in which they live. When the Center started giving awards out over 25 years ago, the environments for aging industry was much different than it is today. There were fewer specialists in the field, fewer products designed specifically for this unique audience, and very little practice that connected the built environment to positive health and wellness outcomes. Today, that is noticeably different. With an explosion of multidisciplinary, day-to-day advocates and champions dedicated to improving the lives of our older population, clearly, we've come a long way. When I look out at all of you, I celebrate just how far we've come and the prospects we have for such a bright future in this industry. So congratulations to you all. In this celebration, it's important to recognize the pioneers who, through their leadership, expertise, and untiring quest to find new advancements and solutions, have moved our industry into what it is today. The Center for Health Design Changemaker Award honors just such individuals and organizations, people that have demonstrated exceptional ability to change the way healthcare facilities are designed and built, who demonstrate the ability to lead and inspire others to go beyond the status quo and change the way we think about healthcare environments in total. The Center's Board of Directors chooses this award recipient for both their vision that shapes the industry as well as their commitment to enhance resident-centered care. It is my great honor to announce that this year's Environments for Aging Changemaker Award goes to Jane Rohde, Principal and Founder of JSR Associates, Inc. Not yet. I have some nice things to say about you, and then you can come up on stage. As a champion for a widespread global cultural shift towards deinstitutionalized senior living facilities, Jane Rohde is an inspirational leader who utilizes evidence-based design approaches to inform her global outreach. For over 25 years, Jane has improved the lives of our elders through education and presentations geared not only to students, but also to peers, regulators, and care providers on senior living trends, programming, and design. As members of the award selection committee noted, Jane's accomplishments include championing a new generation of resident-centered elder care communities throughout the world, including the first such model for elders in Hangzhou, China, and the first Eden Alternative Nursing Home in Tennessee. For anyone who knows Jane, you know that her research and practice have profoundly informed how our industry practices today, and how that practice has transformed the lives of our elder population. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in celebrating and welcoming the tireless Jane Rohde to the stage to accept the Changemaker Award.
Shiny, too. You like that shiny object stuff, right? Clunk. So today what we're going to talk about the why, okay? So we spend a lot of time talking about the who, the how we're going to pay for it, all that kind of thing, all throughout. We often don't talk about the why of why we do things. And to me, it ties to the who, because the people that we work with, the people that we're dedicated to, the service that we provide, it's all about the people. And then that positive outcome ties back to the why, all shows why we do what we do. So many of the discussions in long-term care, we don't quite cover the why very often. But most of us who have served in the long-term care industry, what do we have all in common? We do this because, it's okay, it's a job. Very rarely, right? We do this because we have passion. We have passion because we love this industry. We love older adults. My husband always teases me because he's like, stop talking to the older people in the airport, you're scaring them. So, we always have those moments where we have to be very careful because, that's kind of my response. Last year when I was at Healthcare Design, one of my colleagues said, do you come for networking? Do you come for, why do you come to the conference? It's the exhibits, the product. I go, I get to see the people I love. And her face was just like so startled. She didn't really have to do with that, but it's really true. Because the people that we know and the people that come together to come to these kind of conferences, this is where I get my energy. This is the energy that drives us to do even more than we thought we could actually do. So it's kind of unfathomable after working in this industry for 25 years that we haven't quite hit the tipping point that resident-centered care is the norm. So that's one of our challenges, is we want to make that the norm, always the norm. So in terms of inspiring different things and different people, I've kind of come through that the who has helped me with the why, but the why is where the inspiration is. So seeing an opportunity to deinstitutionalize care and a desire to be part of the most important demographic shift ever in our country. We want to be part of that in history. And aren't we looking for improvements for our own futures? I don't know about you guys, but my friends get together and they're all like, so Jane, what are we doing? Because none of us are satisfied yet with what we've reached and what we're doing. So this is some of my whys, and I want to share with you my stories that inspire my whys. Because all the people that we know are the people who actually inspire us to do what we're doing in terms of the why. So, this is Miriam. I knew Miriam a very long time ago. So that's her and her sister in that photograph. It's the only photograph I have of Miriam, which I'm kind of sad about. She was born on April 8, 1919. She was married to John Sosnowski. She had a beautiful German Shepherd that she kept in her resident room, a picture of him, next to her husband. And she lived at Charlestown Retirement Community, which is where I started my career in the long-term care industry. And she was my dear friend. And so what I wanted to share with you was how much I learned from her. So no matter how much we thought we were closer, we actually had single rooms, but we had single rooms that also felt very institutional. And greatest part about older people, what is it? They tell you exactly what they think, right? So I had no problem in having her tell me exactly what the problems were, what was going on, why the room wasn't working, all the different information on that. And so one day, I took her down. I got to be friends with her. I was over there visiting one day. I became friends with her. And she goes, I would like to go to lunch. And I said, well, where would you like to go to lunch? Because I'd like to go to the independent side. So why would it be that anyone would want to have to say that they have to go to the independent side to see their friends, right? That's ridiculous. Why would we do that? And so what I didn't know, though, and I was fairly young, I didn't know this. So I got her, and she was paralyzed on one side, so she was in a wheelchair, dead weight in a wheelchair, and quite a steep slope that headed us down into the main independent living building. So I started out, I was like, okay. We got her down there, we got in, and then all of a sudden I realized she stopped to talk to people, she talked to staff, we went to lunch. Once I got her settled, she pretty much was good, she could feed herself, all those things. But then on the way back, she was like, hey, can we stop at the store? Oh, and by the way, can we stop in at the salon and say hello? And can we talk a little bit? And she went into the store and she bought her little vanilla wafers and she chose what she wanted. And then we trekked back up to the nursing home. And I thought to myself, wow, we're really missing it. We're missing the problem. We're not talking about how people are living and their choices and what they need. We're talking about environments. And I don't know about you guys, but we talk about toilets constantly. How should it be arranged? How should it be designed? How should it be shaped? How are we getting to it? All those things. But in her case, it hit me so hard in the heart. And that was, almost 25 years ago. And so that passion has driven me further and further. So another point in time with Miriam as a result, so we come back and I would have dinner with her occasionally. And she would talk to me, and they would bib her all up. You know, they'd bib her up head to toe, and I'm thinking, that's not a very nice way to have dinner. And it spurred us on to look at what's another solution. Instead of bringing the table up and down, you ever see any staff ever change the table height, by the way? Ever? No, really, no. And so how do you bring the table to the person? So we designed this table, my friend Chuck and I, we tried all kinds of crazy solutions, flip ups and downs and overs and whatever. And finally we ended up with a very simple little solution that came about with this little piece that came out between the chair, or the chair's the arm of the wheelchair. We patented the table because it allowed someone to sit in a chair with your friend who sits in a chair, with you who sits in a wheelchair. You're still in your same socialization circle, and you're actually with the people you want to be, and you can choose where to sit. Okay? So, but it was Miriam that was the inspiration for that outcome. It wasn't just something you thought up, right? It was Miriam who did that. And I missed her very much when she passed away. So the other thing that she taught me was that when we're looking at, first I thought this was an operational issue, and then I realized, oh, this is an operational issue, it's a design issue. So I was in the building one day, and I came up, and it was a beautiful day outside, and I came up and I said, Miriam, you want to go outside? It's gorgeous. And she's like, oh, yeah, let's go outside. Great sense of humor, too. She held on to my bag while I was in there. She goes, you hold my purse? She goes, yeah, I won't spend too much. You know. So Miriam was great. She had a great sense of humor. So while I'm getting ready to go outside, her other friend behind me says, Anne, she says, can I go outside too? And I go, I don't know. So I went to the staff and I says, okay, if Anne goes out, you might as well take her out. I certainly don't have time. And at the time I thought, oh, how horrible, those horrible operator people. Wrong. They had a garden. The garden was between two buildings, completely inaccessible. No one could see it. The staff lines, you know, understaffed, and trying to see where everybody is. It was a design problem. It was a design problem that was preventing people from being more independent and being able to go outside. And so Miriam taught me that as well. This is Jane Heald, one of the most special people I have ever met in my life. She and I became fast friends. She was in charge of the Green Committee, Sustainability Committee, to do a replacement community. It was for a nursing home in Pleasant Hill, Tennessee. And she first contacted me because it was sustainability issues. Honestly knows more about geothermal than any of the engineers we worked with. Amazingly, just amazing individual. And she says to me, she goes, we started talking about the Eden Alternative. We started talking about Greenhouse Project. We started talking about these other groups. So she was part of the independent group. There was another group that worked on activities and another group that worked on dementia care and models, care models. So we started merging this idea together that isn't sustainability very close to resident-centered care, if you think about the principles of it. So we started looking at how that started to merge together. And as we were working in it, her biggest fear is that she lived in an independent living, little cottage across the street. She saw what was going on. She was right near the nursing home, and she goes, well, if I'm going to end up there, it's going to be good. Right? She goes, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to, this isn't okay. So if I need these extended care services, this is what I'm going to look for. This was the green team. Okay, she had a team. She was the youngest. Okay, everyone else was 79 to 85-ish age-wise, right? Amazing group of individuals that were going to continue to make sure this happened. So as we were working through things, this is Jane. They gave her an orange vest because she was on site every day, videographed every single detail that ever happened on the site, right? So you see the skylights in the picture? These are very relevant to the story here. So we used to have transoms above the windows, and we did some consulting for the project, and I worked with Jane, but we didn't really have the contract administration portion of the project. And so she emails me and calls me one day, and she goes, they're value engineering out my transom windows, and I want more daylight if I'm going to end up living there. So I'm like, oh, so what are you going to do? She goes, well, I think we want skylights, but I need some help. So we kind of figured out where they should go. You know, she talked to the contractor, figured out how much they were. She raised the money. She had them installed. Can you imagine? An administration nightmare, right? The administrator's like, oh, no, she's going to go crazy. So she does this and accomplishes it, puts the skylights in. They're so magnificent, the daylight's so perfect that the administration could not refuse to put them in the rest of the households, right? I mean, that's the person you want to be, right? That's the person you want on your team, right? For all sake. She was just wonderful. She videographed the entire thing, so if there's ever a lawsuit on the project, she would have the data. You know, she was there every single day. So, and what was the measure of success for me on this project was called a farrago. So I had to look up farrago. Farrago is kind of like a potluck dinner in the fellowship hall at church. That would be a close simile to what a farrago is. And the farrago was actually established because they do this when most of the people who live there are either mission driven, they've been on mission trips, they come back, or they're teachers, or they're other folks that have stories to share. So this one woman had gone on this extended trip and wanted to come back. And she said, well, I want to invite one of the other residents. And she goes, but you know, to get into her home, you know, try to get transportation, it's just going to be really, really tough. And then all of a sudden it dawned on them that they now have a household where they can have a party that's just like having it in someone's home. Ta-da, that's right, yay, we finally, you know, right? That's what you want, the ding ding moment, right? And so when we went through that and we had that process, she shared this with me, the story with me, and I go, now that's a measure of success. You know how we'll walk through buildings after we complete them and we look at things, we think, you know, or they change a use of a space. How many times does that happen, right? You know, change of staff, change of use. And you think, oh, if they just told me, I could have helped fix such and such. Well, after walking through the building and then seeing this, and then walking through the old building with the white shiny floors, the plexiglassed-in, excuse me, nursing home, nursing station area, the white dining room that served 62 people all together. Do we all eat dinner all the time unless you're at something like this with 62 people in your living room? Well, last night we did, but no, otherwise, not necessarily. So if that's the case, why wouldn't we evaluate this more like the home model? So when you look at this and we look what she's accomplished with the farrago idea and the fact that you went back through and looked at what was the setting, we made success. That's success. And this was the first Eden Alternative nursing home that has been in Tennessee. So something else that came out of working with Jane, I love her. I mean, she's just amazing. Even the guys that were working on the site who did like the digging up of the trees and the clearing of the site, every one of them knew what the Eden Alternative model was when she got done with them. Everybody knew. Now, there wasn't one person that didn't know. So, but as a result, with working with Jane and others, a few years ago, I'm going to start with my friend Louise Nicholson Carter. She said to me one time, you know when you need something, you see something that's a need out there that needs to get done, kind of gives you a little burn in your belly, and you think, oh, this really needs to get done. She would go, you know, you just got to do it. And I thought, she's so scooped Nike. Nike had the expression, but she was really actively working with that. And so this initiative came about. It was at an EFA conference. My friend Jim Call, who works at, he just retired actually, from Carroll Woods in Chapel Hill, and Kevin Stover from the Green Building Initiative, we did a presentation here at EFA about sustainability and long-term care. Nobody really wanted to talk about that. USGBC didn't want to talk about it, other organizations, they didn't really want to talk about senior living as a unique group of folks and a unique building type. So we created it. We did it with a group of volunteers. We created the Senior Living Sustainability Guide, and it was outcome driven, right? So this whole idea that you start with the resident, right? We start with the resident, we start with the organization. You find out what those resident desired outcomes are. You work through what the operation, every single function that you go through, and you put that together, and you support it by the physical environment. So often we see the physical setting being designed and done and completed, and you're like, and did you talk to anybody? And you wonder why people are in your office, thinking that what are you doing to my community? What are you doing to my home? They're always asking those questions. Involve them, hello, it's not hard, but we miss that a lot. And then the other piece that always seems to be somewhat missing is the social cultural context. So if we're designing something in Florida, and you have an older adult who is Orthodox Jewish being taken care of from someone who came from the islands, who doesn't understand kosher, you got a lot of work to do, right? You got to figure out how to make those components work to be able to make a housing situation work and a service position work, and how do you help that person feel as though they have choice within their environment. So the sociocultural context after working in China, wow, was that highlighted, right? I mean, I really got it really quickly and really fast over that. And then the continuous improvement part, it's never perfect, and it changes. People who live there change, the operations change, activities change, reevaluating those on a regular basis to kind of get that continuous improvement feedback that then impacts all those other dimensions. So, and part of this is kind of funny. When I first showed this to John Bradford from Interface, he told me, he looked at this diagram and he goes, "You're a futurist." I was like, oh, cool, I'm a futurist. Then I was like, oh, wait a second. Nobody understands me. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. And maybe some people think I'm crazy. I thought, oh, that's great, I'm a futurist, yay. So in a sense, it was like, it can be kind of a lonely place. But I thought, what an interesting concept, because to me this was natural. Because when you work with older people and you work in the communities enough, you just get it. Kind of comes out as part of it. So, and the other thing that this did is that not only, and Jane, of course, Jane Heald was on my committee. Of course she was, right? Amongst others, other folks that we all know. And it also influenced us internationally. So I started working in China about 5 years ago. And it's been one of the most amazing things for me to see how the social cultural context really does impact what you need. But it's starting a new industry, a brand new industry with no really harsh regulations that are hard to follow. It's an opportunity, it's like a blank slate. Can you imagine if the US had a blank slate, what we would do different? It would be amazing, amazing what we would do different. And so we were working through the sustainability guide. We used it for the functional program and the process for the beginning, because you're basically starting from scratch. And the poor owner, he's like, do we really have to talk about every single step of operations? I'm like, yeah, we really do, we really do. And we did, and we made it through that. But what was really funny is his executive director, Ann Jeng, she says, the functional program is the source of all things. And Mark looks at me and he goes, that makes you a sorceress. So I was like, all right, we'll take that. Much preferred that over the futurist comment, right? So what does China look like now? So this is what, China has been redesigned over and over again, but this is what we're hoping for, right? So this is and I had recently a colleague of mine emailed me and he goes, if this is what senior living could look like, this might not be such a bad gig. He's like 30. So that was a good sign, right? Like the millennial says it's okay. So this is under construction. And most people will say that if they've worked in China, how many people worked internationally, worked in China? Yeah, so you got some sense of, it doesn't always quite come out like you're hoping. Is that fair? So it actually looks like what we're hoping. And so that we know that it is being built and coming along and going in the right direction. So this is a trip that we took to China a couple of years ago now, it's a year and a half ago. And with that, we had an opportunity for precedents within the industry, but they use the household design as their basis, but they have an adult daycare component as part of it. So where we think of kind of having community space, and this is more like, we call it extended care. We've transposed skilled nursing, assisted living, our labels, we've transposed those into China. And those aren't the labels that really need to be used there. We can basically say it's extended care and it cares for anything that you need, and this is your parameter. And so that's what's kind of started happening within China. The other exciting part for me is that they're also looking at 2 more models for China. One is doing a multi-generational community model, and the other is a moderate to lower income model. We affectionately call it the Motel 8 model, and only because there's, what a Motel 8 looks like, right? That building type is everywhere in China, and a lot of them are vacant. So we have an opportunity with an existing building stock to actually create something that could actually help moderate and lower income seniors in China. And so with that, we are also thinking adult daycare and maybe a little bit different household model, a little bit different staffing model. We have a training institution that they've coupled with University of Minnesota. I mean, they've looked at every aspect of what we know needs to go into a successful model, and they're doing it. So that's what just makes it so exciting for me. And their baby boom makes us look like a bloop, like a little bloop, and they're like, it's huge. Just unbelievable amount of seniors in that culture and in that community. So, and this is part of the Chinese team. Notice the tall one in the back. Yeah, it's kind of like Jane Zilla goes to Asia. But the interesting thing, people will say to me, well, you probably work mostly with men. I'm like, actually no, I work with some of the strongest women I have ever met in my life, and they are not only the who, but they are the why. They're amazing, and what they've been able to do, everything from government relations on down to figuring out training, figuring out hiring, figuring out staffing, figuring out the interior. By the time you go through 3 different groups in a local design institute to try to figure out how the interior can actually work, this is a pretty much a woman-driven team. They do let some guys in. Owner's a guy, so we do let him come in. And so while I was in China the last time, I want to share this with you. We discussed activities and the importance of activities. So can you imagine ever going into a long-term care and not having any activities at all? That's what they have in China. Basically, you go into a VIP ward that would be like a hospital ward of the 1950s, very sterile white. You're provided a bed and you're provided clinical care. That's all. You're not really provided anything else other than that. So families are responsible for making sure meals and different things happen. And so they've been studying how to do activities and do activities right. And so they have been using the social welfare program as proving ground, as a way to do this. And with the proving ground, they have Grandma Knee. And I couldn't show you Grandma Knee, so I'm going to show you Henry in a second. So what happens here is that Grandma Knee, they show me the pictures before activities. You know, Grandma Knee's kind of like dozing in her chair. And then after activities and the difference. Now those pictures were proprietary, so I had to use a different example. And some of you may have seen this, but I find this amazing because the activity program is what makes people come alive. We so often focus on the 10% of the clinical folks, right? The 10% is the clinical need. It's 90% of the person's life. And that's what we're trying to work toward addressing. And so with that, I'd like to introduce you to Henry.
Hi, Papa. Hi, Papa.
Huh?
How you doing?
I'm all right. I'm fine. Wait.
Who am I?
I don't know. Wait a minute. I don't know.
Okay, it's Jerry. How long has he been in the nursing home? Approximately 10 years. He was having seizures, and my mother couldn't handle him at home. Of course, it affected me greatly because he was always, you know, fun-loving, singing, you know, every occasion he would come out with a song, no matter where he was. I remember as a child, he used to walk us down the street, me and my brother, and he would stop and do Singing in the Rain. He would have us jumping and swinging around poles. He was, you know, he was good. He was always into music, you know, always loved singing, dancing.
His name is Henry Dreyer.
Uh-huh.
And I'm looking more or less for religious music for him.
Okay.
Because he enjoys music and he always quoting the Bible. So I'd rather have that for him.
We first see Henry inert, maybe depressed, unresponsive, and almost unalive.
Henry.
Yeah?
Henry.
Yes, sir.
I found your music. You want your music now?
What's up to you?
Okay. Let's try your music, okay? And then you tell me if it's too loud or not.
Then he is given an iPod containing, we know, his favorite music. And immediately he lights up. His face assumes expression, his eyes open wide. He starts to sing and to rock and to move his arms, and he's being animated by the music.
And he used to always sit on the unit with his head like this. He didn't really talk to much people. And then when I introduced the music to him, this is his reaction ever since.
The philosopher Kant once called music the quickening art, and Henry is being quickened, he's being brought to life.
Yeah?
I'm going to take the music for 1 second, okay? Just to ask you a few questions. Okay? I'm going to give it back to you.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
The effect of this doesn't stop, because when the headphones are taken off, Henry, normally mute and virtually unable to answer the simplest yes or no questions, is quite voluble.
Henry,
Yeah?
do you like the iPod? Do you like the music you're hearing?
Yes.
Tell me about your music.
Well, I don't have none, I mean.
Do you like music?
Yeah, I'm crazy about music. You play beautiful music, beautiful sound. Beautiful.
Did you play music when you were? Did you like music when you were young?
Yes, I went to big dances and things.
What was your favorite music when you were young?
Well, I guess, Cab Calloway was my #1 band guy I liked. the holy, the holly, the hilly, the holy, the milly, the holly, the ah.
What's your favorite Cab Calloway song?
Oh, I'll be home there for Christmas. Oh, you can count and plan on me with plenty of snow, mistletoe, present wrapped around your tree. Ow!
So in some sense, Henry is restored to himself. He has remembered who he is, and he's reacquired his identity for a while through the power of music.
What does music do to you?
Give me the feeling of love, romance. Figure right now the world need to come into music, singing. You got beautiful music here, beautiful, oh, lovely. And I feel the band of love, the dream. The Lord came to me, made me holy. I'm a holy man. So he gave me this sound. So they say, I meet you. Say, Rosalie, won't you love me? Rosalie, won't you be sweet and kind?
With this beautiful new technology, you can have all the music which is significant for you in something as big as a matchbox or whatever. And I think this may be very, very important in helping to animate, organize, and bring a sense of identity back to people who are out of it. Otherwise, music will bring them back into it, into their own personhood, their own memories, their own autobiographies.
So this is Henry, and this is what they're doing in China with Grandma Ni. And so for me to see that kind of activity level brought up to an amazing thing, I mean, it's music, yes, but it's other things as well. So just this opportunity to be able to change lives that much. Think about what we have in terms of the power that's in this room, of how much change could actually occur. This is, however, I learned about him from Steve Lindsay, who's the executive director from Garden Spot Village up in Pennsylvania. When Justice Sandra Day O'Connor was elected to the Supreme Court, Hal was her artist who did her portrait. It now hangs in the Supreme Court in the Historical Society. But they couldn't figure out why Hal didn't participate in painting activities when he was at Garden Spot. So they're like, well, what's the problem here? Why? And it's a very resident-centered program. And when they asked him the question, he goes, well, I always paint alone. That's where I want to paint. I don't want to necessarily paint with others. That's where I get my solace. That's where I get my draw to be able to do this. So being that it is resident-centered care, they set it up so that he could paint in his room. And so by painting in his room, he started painting again and enjoying what he loved to do. So I think that those are the people, those are the who's that lead to the whys of why we do what we're doing. So I think it's his story, it's Henry's stories, it's many people's stories. I'm sure everyone in this room has those kinds of stories. But this is the type of work that's inspired what we've been doing with the Facility Guidelines Institute. And so some of you who know me know very well that this book, it was like birthing a child, I believe, of a process. But in 2010, we started with the cycle of, and the guidelines are utilized for licensing, for those who don't know that. And the 2010 is when I started on it. And guess what resident-centered care or residential care was called back then? Part 4 Other. Really? We have the largest demographic in the history of man, and this is what we got, And I was like, okay, so this has got to change. Right back to Louise Nicholson Carter. It's got to change, right? So how are we going to make that change? So we started with Part 4 as the beginning for 2010. We changed things there, and then they decided to divide it up into a separate guideline. And so we chaired this. I chaired this with John Shoesmith and David Green, and we were able to create an entire guidelines that's for our industry, right? Yeah, our industry. So, and many of you know David Green, who we lost last year. And he was someone who challenged me constantly, but in a good way, to go far beyond what I ever thought was possible. He always had enough energy, and I would be like, okay, really? And he'd be like, we can do this. And so I can see him and John Shoesmith going through the functional program. And we have a functional programming process in the guideline now that it's far, I think it really exceeds what the hospital guys are doing because they're looking at ours. So when you get the hospital guys and the outpatient guys to start looking at what we're doing, that's a good sign, right? Continuum of care, you know, right? Kind of handles into what we're doing too. And so I thought it was wonderful. I remember sitting at David's kitchen table and we're pounding out details for a senior living guide and looking at his beautiful garden. And Mark Spitelnik, our client from China, said, he's a maniac. David's a maniac. He goes, but he's our maniac. So that was really the absolute upshoot for that. And the picture adjacent to that, I call it my mug shot. And I love it because a couple years ago I had surgery and my mother-in-law was taking care of me. My husband comes home and I go, do you think I could have my mug? You know, like my mug. I had no control really, you know. So he goes, yeah, he goes, I'll get your green tea, here's your mug, whatever. But I thought to myself, that's control. They got to pick out what mug they wanted to drink out of. They got to choose what kind of beverage they wanted to have. And so to me, that's a huge part of what we're all about, what we're trying to achieve here. And I also think that with the support of the Rothschild Foundation, the support of the FGI, which has been amazing, creates an opportunity for authorities having jurisdiction to actually know what to do to help us do resident-centered models, right? That's been always part of the problem. Regulation is part of our barrier. But now we have additional tools that we can talk to them and help them help us. So regulatory doesn't have to necessarily be the enemy. They can be someone who actually supports and figures out what we're doing for the future. So what's the future why? You know, many of us have been in this industry a very long time. We've made huge improvements, but we still got to get to that tipping point area, right? So promoting choice, communities that are supportive and provide socialization, that are designed for longevity. So designing for longevity is the new PC term for aging in place. Just so you know, that's what we're always talking about. Randy Pfizer from ASID helped me with that. And friends of mine asked, so Jane, you know, what are we going to do? You know, affectionately they're calling it the compound. You know, what are we going to create? Because what we have now isn't quite where we need to be yet. So if we start looking at affinity interests and we start looking at the community as either an intervention or a co-housing opportunity, that's where I think our future is going in terms of what is the why. We're seeing that in China to start looking at multi-generational communities, right? So if we're going to do that here, why aren't we doing it here too, more so, and evaluating that? And looking through the opportunities to do that. And it could be affinity interests that bring us together, it could be faith backgrounds, or it could be any reasons that bring a group together. But community can be an intersection for creating a way of life in a sustainable manner, which is very appealing, not only elders, but also millennials. So we start to have this also a young crossover. To me, we can't do what we're doing if we don't recognize that we need the millennial group and the elder group and us in between. One of my colleagues is here from my office, Tara, and she goes, I text my grandma every day. You know, I stay in touch with my grandma. So it's not her mom's generation, it's the other two generations that are connecting. So that's really, I think, is the way we need to kind of start looking at things when we look at multi-generational community models. We're not moving forward. Here we go. This is Generations of Hope, and this is a model that some of you are probably familiar with. I know Betsy's very familiar with it because she introduced me to this as well. The idea that you have a vulnerable population and that you surround that by creating an intentional multi-generational community. So for example, here it was kids that were wanted to come to foster care, out of foster care into permanent adoption. And we have seniors as a wraparound that come to that community specifically because they want to volunteer and live there, with some incentives actually to come as well. And so Generations of Hope has been a model that's been around for a long time, but it's just starting now to really gain some momentum. And so that's what we find exciting. This is Bridge Meadows. This is in Oregon, and it is for young mothers who have children who don't necessarily, or they age out of foster care. So then the senior component is a wraparound piece of that to help with the vulnerable population. So it starts talking about community. So when people ask me, they're like, well, where's senior living going to go? Senior living is going to go to a community so that community can be part of the intervention of what we're seeing. And I think sustainability has a big part to do with that. They're just opening Genesis. Genesis is a young mothers who age out of foster care who have one child. It's small, it's a new inroad. It was the first time, I find this amazing, Mark Dunham from Generations of Hope brought together the DC Aging Services group with the Child Welfare Services. Had never been in the same room before, ever. that's change. That's potential, right? That's potential for discussion. So first you have the government, and you have the turf, and you have all that kind of stuff you got to work through. But nonetheless, we've come up with a project that has a private developer with a partnership that actually has those two components, and they're come together to bring services for both seniors and for young women who are aging out of foster care with a child. So we're starting to see it work and work well. This next one is very near and dear to my heart. I did a motorcycle fundraiser for this last year for Bastion. This is Matthew. Matthew was the only young man to survive his entire unit that was destroyed in Iraq and completely decimated. He had traumatic brain injury. He came back with multiple wounds. He's the most interesting young man I've ever met. It gives you such heartfelt wonder. He still has a sense of humor, and his mom told me that that's how he manages, because he has a sense of humor. This is his mom, and they're standing on the ground of what hopefully will be the first Bastion community that has seniors that wrap around wounded warriors as the vulnerable population. And so wounded warriors with multiple amputations could be post-traumatic stress disorder. It could be traumatic brain injury or other issues. But it also gives his mom an opportunity. If she also wanted to live in the community, she could move there too, right? So it's giving this choice, an opportunity, and information to folks to allow them to make choices that they don't have. And so when we met in Richmond at the VA, greatest group in their post-traumatic stress disorder, they have a unit, a polytrauma unit. Best folks ever. Met with some of the neurologists, and we're talking with them. And I said, well, it definitely seems they had step-down units. So you go into acute care, and then you go into a step-down for, so you would relearn your ADLs, and you'd go in and you relearn your IADLs, and they were kind of looking through that. And I said, well, where do they go when they leave? I said, it really seems like there's a gap, because there's not a gap, because there's a cliff. There's a cliff for these young people. And so that's what we're what Bastion is all about. So Dylan Tett is the man who started this, and he's working really hard on it in New Orleans, and he actually has post-traumatic stress disorder himself. And he came back after tours as well. And this is Nettie. Nettie's lovely. Nettie lives in a moderate to lower income community, and it's called Cedar Lane. And Nettie's great. It's become her chosen family. She doesn't have children, so it's become her chosen family. She likes movies, and she's joined Pokino for the first time a couple Fridays ago. And she also happened to celebrate her 90-plus birthday. So her 90-plus birthday was actually in January, and she got to celebrate that. So she's still doing new things. But she was starting to have some difficulty with some different services, and I really have a lot of respect for the executive director, Beverly Stickles, because she's been able to couple together the different services that people need to do for care management to exist. And that's our gap, right? That's our big gap. It's care management. How do we make care management work? And so she's been able to tie it to reimbursements and eligibility and all those kinds of things, and she's allowed people to stay in their homes, stay where they want to be within community, and be able to have services brought to them and provided for them. She was born in Sauterley Plantation, and she's lived there for 12 years in Cedar Lane. So Cedar Lane really is her home. And so this is where we want to try the other who, that we want to really get to the why. And this picture kind of cracks me up, because this is Mr. and Mrs. Biggs, and it really is true. The longer you live with someone, the more you look like somebody. I mean, you really think about it. They say that about pets all the time, but I saw these two pictures. I was like, really? Wow. It's like, so it really does happen. In this case, they've had their ups and downs as well, living in the community, but there was a little bit of a family intervention. They had some discussion. They worked it through. Otherwise, one or both would end up in nursing home. So instead of having nursing home as the only option, they were able to figure out how to make the other options to work out. And so what about the CCRC market? Okay, we've been doing some work on that side, where we've been looking at the continuing care retirement community market, and we're seeing people like Mary and Beatrice. We did focus groups a couple weeks ago. And as we were doing those focus groups, we talked a little bit about who's in the independent living. This is an older population. It's aged out, right? We used to have average ages of 75, 76, 80, 83, 86. Some communities have like average age of 86. And this gal here, Beatrice, she was 82, and she goes, this winter was a little harsh. I'm thinking that maybe it's time to, move into somewhere where I have a little bit more access to service. And she said, really, I love my neighbors. They're really good to me. They watch out for me, but I think I just need a little bit more security than that. And so 82, still driving, still on it, the whole thing. And she said, and I think that when you look at that, everybody who was in independent living, and I asked them this question because they were fairly new to coming to the community. The other thing that was a little scary is there was a lot of people who came to the interviews that looked like they were my age. And I was like, oh dear. When aging starts facing you in the mirror, it's like, oh, okay, I got it. It was a little scary. But she was working through it, and as we were talking through the different parts and components of it, I think that Beatrice really came to the conclusion that she didn't really mind that home health care services are basically being provided in almost all of their independent living units currently. And she goes, yeah, well, everybody needs it. You know, there used to be a lot of stigma, right, about moving through the continuum instead of having services brought to you. And there's such a huge shift out of that now, and I think there's more acceptance to that as well. Technology is huge. They have a huge technology committee, and they were all over that about their new apps and how their apps were working. And it was like they were, you know, way over it, way further along than I could have even imagined. And the woman on the left is considering moving in because her mom's lived there for like 20 years. So just to give you an idea of how it's happening, generationally, people are now moving into CCRCs. So how many of you guys have read this book? Be more no. Okay, all the rest of you haven't raised your hands, haven't read it, you have to read this book. It's a necessity, it's a necessity. I have a copy, I had them put it in the bookstore for those who still do hard copy. You can download it on your Kindle, whatever you want to do, but you got to read this book. What the amazing thing is about this book is I happened to be reading it when my mother-in-law, Ursula, was diagnosed with cancer. And it helped me so much be able to ask the right questions to help her decide what was important to her. It doesn't matter what's important to us or the family or anyone else. It's really important to what happens for Ertz. And so it helped us. It helped us develop the right questions. It helped us know what to ask the doctors. It helped us figure out what and how to evaluate that to do that. And the other part about it is that he's not focusing on the 10% of the clinical need anymore, because the medical profession wants to fix it. Aging isn't a disease. Aging is something that happens to us, right? So how are you going to address aging and not treat it as a clinical diagnosis? And that's what his book talks about. The best part about it is it's mainstream. So it's in a language that everybody can understand, everybody can resonate with, they can talk about. It talks about the greenhouse, it talks about why assisted living happened and what the real drivers were for that. And he talks about it from a very personal perspective, because his why is his family, his dad predominantly. So I really kudos to Atul for writing this book, because this brings what we all do here on an everyday basis out there to the consumer basis. And I think that's part of our problem, is we're not reaching out far enough to the consumer side of the basis of it all. And so I have another why. This is my mom and dad. My mom and dad are here, actually, and they're celebrating their 53rd wedding anniversary next week. Can we go to the hand for that? So it's like, wow, right? So, and my dedicated staff from JSR is another why. There's Lauren, Trinice, Nicole, Tara, Andrew, and Roy, and they're all change makers in their own right. And my lovely husband was able to join me today as well, and he's a tugboat captain. Everyone always asks, yeah, so how did that happen? So he's a sailboat. We met on the sailboats, and he shares my passion, and he supports my passion very much for my love of elders. So, the who is you. Does that sound like a new Dr. Seuss book? I love that. The who is you. So every time I see you around the conference, the who is you, okay? So there's a bit of change maker in all of us, I believe. And I think that the why equals the person plus the inspiration, right? The people who really inspire us and pull that together to make it happen. And I think there's a change maker in all of us, and I think that there's an opportunity. So the equation improves our futures, right? That's our outcomes. So the why equals the person and the inspiration, but it's then the outcome that we use. It helps us measure it, helps us make improvements, helps it make it more wonderful in terms of what we're doing for older adults. And speaking of inspiration, I now get to present a very, very special award. The Russ Coyle Lifetime Achievement Award is the highest honor the Center for Health Design can bestow upon a professional in the field of healthcare design. Presented only 3 times, the award recognizes a significant body of work with lasting influence on research, theory, and practice, with contributions of an individual over an entire career. With this honor, the Center for Health Design acknowledges an individual's continuous dedication to the advancement of our field, whose legacy not only informs how we practice, but profoundly changes the lives of individuals we seek to serve. On behalf of the Center for Health Design, it's my true honor to bestow this Lifetime Achievement Award to Betsy Browley. To share a couple more things about our dear friend Betsy. She's been my dear friend and colleague for very many years.
That may be where you want to stop.
Okay. She has dedicated her life to writing 2 amazing books that are the primer for anyone who's working in the healthcare industry when we're talking about dementia care for older adults. And she came from a residential background, but seeing a tremendous need with your mom and everything else that you've seen in your lifetime is to look for designing environments, specifically for those with dementia. She's committed to her life and career to helping architects, designers, providers, and residents to improve environments and the lives of those she has always served. Betsy is an amazing connector. Most people that I know in this room, I know because of Betsy Browley. It's amazing. Her passion is dedicated to Alzheimer's Association, being one of the first founders of the North Carolina, Northern California chapter. Continued support of the importance of healthcare interior designers and having them certified through the American Academy of Healthcare Interior Designers. She has worked tirelessly as a board member in all of those different endless hours of supporting that group and organization. And what we've done the most together is we've done education sessions. I couldn't even tell you how many years. We've done so many education sessions. No. But I'll look up something and I'll go, well, that was in a presentation Betsy and I did. Maybe last year? Oh, no, last year. Oh, no, maybe a couple years before that. But we've done, and she's brought current and relevant information to so many young people, older people, everyone that we know. And I just thank you so much for being my friend and my colleague, and congratulations.
You know it goes well. I love you too. Thank you. How does one have any idea what to say other than, this has been, the last 30 years for me, I never, ever thought that I would stand in front of a group of people this size and be able to say my name, much less anything else. My mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. That was my introduction to that. I had never heard of it before, had no idea what it was, and as I learned how devastating it could be and how many families and how many people have been affected by that, I was not able to walk away from it and say there's nothing I can do. I didn't know what I could do, but I knew that we had to make some changes and at the very least, learn how to support families who were going through trying to care for somebody who was losing the ability to either understand or take care of themselves. So most of my career has been dedicated to older adults, and I never thought that would be the case. And it's been wonderful getting to know them, to also work with people who unfortunately are not able to live in their homes for their entire life, and to try to make some of the places that we offer care for these people and for the families who are supporting them to be able to do it in such a way that it begins to feel like home and they are accepted and they're helped tremendously. And the Center for Health Design has done nothing but help all the way through the years that I've been involved. It's one of the best organizations I've ever had anything to do with. I'm thrilled to see how many people are here today. I hope you're all getting this, and I know you are getting even more benefit than I did at the time. If there's anything that I can ever do to contribute to helping you with any of the things that you're doing with older adults, I hope you'll give me a call. And I thank you more than I know how to say, and thanks.
So thank you all for listening to us and for our awards, and it's been such a great pleasure to share. And just as much as Betsy, I'm here to talk with you too, so if there's anything else that we can do, we're happy to help you all. Enjoy the rest of your conference, and I believe we're turning it over to our next segment, to Kristen.